Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back at Rejuvenate 2021, Edition 1, and we are almost at the tail end of our talk series. We are happy to be headed towards Tampa, Florida, where Djimo Serodio is located. And Djimo, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Andrew. It's good to be here. A bit early for me, but nonetheless excited to be here with you today.
It's 7 a.m. If I recall correctly.
Just about correct.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for waking up so early and taking the time to speak to us and speak to our audiences here based in Malaysia. But of course, we've also got audiences from all over the world. We've got speakers from 4 different continents since yesterday. And we hope that our audiences have been enjoying themselves. Okay, enough about the show, but let's talk about who Djimo Serodio is. Please, the floor is yours.
Sure. So yeah, I was born and raised in Mozambique, actually. So I originally come from Southern Africa. I am Mozambican as a result, but I'm also Portuguese. I have a Portuguese family. So I also hold a European passport, and I've been living in the US now for just about a decade. So I moved here originally for university. I got involved very early on with sustainable food systems. I did quite a bit of consulting on vertical farming, rooftop agriculture, some desert-based greenhouse consulting as well in the Middle East. But mostly vertical farming in the US. And I do have an opinion on vertical farming in that I was attracted to it. I was drawn to it from its sustainability promise. And I certainly understand where that sustainability promise comes from, but it is really not grounded in reality for the most part. I think it saves land use, but there are some really big challenges with energy consumption and overall just associated carbon cost of these vertical farms. And so more recently, I got involved with ecological principles of food production, of ecosystem services. And that's really how my career has transitioned and transformed into education first, just to really elevate the message about what the problems and solutions to our food situation is globally, which I do think is one of the biggest challenges of our time for sure.
And speaking about education, Just Learn is, you are the founder of Just Learn. Perhaps walk us through how that came about and what does it do, and perhaps what is currently doing at the moment.
Yeah, happy to. I have some shares to show if you'd like. So,
okay.
With regards to Just Learn, if you can see my screen here.
Yes.
So really when I started consulting in the education, in the agriculture space, there was certainly a lot of demand already from schools and from educational institutions to bring agriculture and gardening as a physical, hands-on, learn-by-doing process. It already inherently ties so many things together. But something special was happening with aquaponics. And aquaponics specifically was also receiving a certain demand in education, but most of it was not being implemented successfully. It does require some technical expertise at the end of the day, and it is quite sophisticated as a balanced system of organisms. If you're not familiar with aquaponics, I'll definitely expand upon it in just a second. But the highlight here is that I was already consulting on the agriculture space. I was seeing this demand from schools and seeing less than perfect solutions around aquaponics being offered. And so that's when I decided to build an educational aquaponics lab from the ground up, really meant to be educational while leveraging those core principles of experiential learning that apply agriculture-based technology. So our core offering at Just Learn is PlanetBox. PlanetBox, is an aquaponics system. It comprises obviously of a fish tank at the bottom and a garden on top, a grow bed. We call it PlanetBox because we're not limited to teaching about agriculture, in fact, or food systems. Really, we're serving more broadly the environmental sciences and the life sciences. And we're merely using aquaponics as an ecosystem, as an artificial ecosystem or a minimally viable ecosystem. So it's a closed loop, of course. It's not entirely closed because it breeds from the atmosphere, and you do need to feed the fish, but it's closed loop in the sense that the fish waste, which is packed with nutrients and fertilizers, is nitrified or is detoxified from a toxic ammonia form into a nitrate, which is a bioavailable form for the plants. And I think this is just one of the more important messages that we would like to capture through aquaponics, from which to teach or to talk about ecology more broadly, energy transfers across multiple trophic levels, and really use this as an analogy for how the planet more broadly operates. And so, as mentioned, there's an aquarium and a garden on top. Really, there's also a biofilter, and this is where plants grow out of, but this is also where the bacteria live. And the bacteria is very important with aquaponics because without the right bacteria, you cannot induce the right metabolism. And the metabolism in this case is really what allows the toxicity and the nutrients in the fish waste to be released through aquaponics into a bioavailable nitrate for the plants. This is an incredible journey for students. I'm happy to show photos as well if you'd like to see, but the main message here is that all of a sudden, not only do we have a highly engaging tool that students can learn from, play with really, but they're being exposed to ecological dynamics, broadly speaking, to emerging fields in agriculture, and to understanding about how to solve our global food situation. And so some of the emerging industries that can be exhibited through aquaponics is that while aquaponics combines aquaculture and hydroponics into one, it can be used to understand individually those industry verticals. So hydroponics, as you know, is an emerging, fast-growing technique for agriculture, growing plants without soil, so growing plants with water. But more recently, perhaps you're seeing all the attention that aquaculture is receiving. So aquaculture by itself as a protein source with fish production is absolutely one of the fastest growing subsectors in agriculture. And so the beauty of aquaponics is that we can touch on aquaculture as well, and the process by which we farm fish and not catch wild caught fish, which obviously has huge environmental problems currently. And so really PlanetBox is a tool to explore just so many things from a lens of systems thinking across multiple organisms. And it can again be used for ecological understanding and environmental science and environmental engineering, but also specifically agriculture and food systems, which obviously is a bias I have. I'm very much focused on this problem solution complex of food. So just this is a product deck after all. So just want to show you how we kind of operate. PlanetBox is the central tool we use. We mostly work with school districts, public schools, private schools, and only recently did we start serving individuals directly at home as a result of socially distanced learning and the pandemic. So we have a suite of new offerings that have surfaced in the last few months. But for the purpose of this presentation, really, I'm just highlighting how we package all of these things together. So as mentioned, we have PlanetBox, we have an app. This app allows for data capture of all types. There's ammonia, nitrite, nitrates, pH, related data that is just commonplace in aquaponics. And the reason Planetbox or Aquaponics makes for such a good project-based learning tool is because that data can be captured and understood over the course of a semester or even a year. And so it neatly packs and aligns with your traditional, middle school science or high school biology or environmental science courses. And on top of that, we're really, if there's a brand we're looking to develop for ourselves at Just Learn, is that obviously Planetbox and Aquaponics is a start, but what we're looking to mirror and to make more accessible through curriculum and through modules is circular STEM more broadly. So the idea that we're building a circular economy, I'm sure you've heard that term multiple times, but the components of a circular economy where wastes are reduced, efficiencies are improved, and loops are just closed across society, whether it's at the municipal grid level or industrial agriculture practices. There are many things we have been doing wrong that I think students need to be equipped to do differently and to address, in fact, as central pillars really for addressing climate change and our current environmental crisis. And these are the themes that we really want to focus with our curriculum. So all things renewable electricity and renewable energy, learning about electricity in the context of renewable energy. Composting, for example, it's such an interesting exercise for people to be able to turn food waste or food scraps into reusable nutrients that will grow plants just fine. And you can recycle food wastes in so many different ways. One of them is composting, but another one that's really interesting, and we're starting to roll these out as activities, is around insect production. So what's interesting about insects, not only are they, amongst the most efficient production of protein, but all of a sudden, to showcase the students that, hey, if you turn a food waste into an insect, and now you can use this insect to feed a chicken or even to feed the fish in Planetbox, now your inputs into Planetbox are circular. So they are upcycling and sort of recycling, to say it differently, wastes that would otherwise be unmonitored and just end up somewhere unknown. But all of a sudden, we're able to reintroduce that into a food-producing ecosystem. And I think these are important insights that students need to understand today, more so than just being assessed on very structured, lesson planning, and really to bring those lesson plans to life and to show them real-world examples of what different careers can actually look like, not limited to the examples I shared, but really across computer science, genetics, just to touch a little bit on computer science. So as mentioned, Planetbox comes with a light. And so a lot of manipulation of plant growth can be done with a photo period. And so learning how to code by turning on and off the light into different daylight periods where you can thereby mimic the sunset or the sunrise times, or flip them and manipulate them inside the classroom. So that's the gist of it. There is a trend. The trend is that, at least here in the US, but really globally, environmental science as a science offering is growing very, very quickly. It's amongst the fastest growing subjects by enrollment. I think this is a very important trend to understand. And it's particularly important in the context of thinking of environmental science, not only as an interdisciplinary science, which often is more relevant for students to look at, but to not just be categorized as an alternative to biology or an easy biology, as has been the case for quite some time, but one where you can actually culminate your understanding of deep sciences. So we have a lot of school systems here in the US using Planetbox that actually have moved environmental science further out into college preparatory, so 11th, 12th grades. And these students are bringing a deep understanding of biology or chemistry or physics for that matter, but they're applying it into the context of environmental science. And the other way works as well. using indeed environmental science more as an introductory science with a broad interdisciplinary approach to allow students to then pursue a more isolated science such as biology and chemistry. And I think these shifts are very relevant for our time. But so here you see a planet box inside a classroom. In this case, it's a much younger crowd. I believe they're fourth graders. But really we're across K-12, even university level research at this point, because PlanetBox is just compact and packaged into a small form factor, right? And so for that reason, it's as useful in one single PlanetBox in a classroom, multiple PlanetBoxes in a classroom, for pedagogy, for student groups, ownership, as well as for research, much like a Petri dish is, except it's more of a laboratory, a living laboratory. But the idea here is that it changes over the course of a year. So it's really a very visual experiment for students to decide what plants they want to grow, what seeds they want to germinate. Maybe they don't want to just germinate seeds. They might want to clone seeds. But really understand a bunch of factors in botany, in fish keeping, in water chemistry, etc. One of the other more important things we've had to do to be plug and play for education is to respect, of course, the biological or operational steps of bringing of cycling an aquaponics system. And I can talk about cycling in more detail. It's a very important piece. If you'd like me to continue sharing the screen, but
yeah, yes.
But beyond cycling, bringing an ecosystem to life, you need to inoculate it with bacteria, you need to dose it with ammonia, you need to establish a metabolism, which means getting the conditions right. And that process can take some time. It's a sensitive cycle. Only once it's established does maintenance go down and your attention and kind of be autonomous, right? Self-sufficient in a sense. But to get it moving, it's really an opportunity for students and teachers to collect data and understand what's happening at a microbial level. And then these are very insightful cycles to understand the nitrogen cycle. In fact, you might be surprised to think that we have I believe 80% of our atmosphere is nitrogen, and we don't talk about nitrogen that much. We talk about carbons or CO2, for example, which is definitely under 1% of the atmosphere. I think something like 0.02% of the atmosphere. But what's interesting about nitrogen is it's at the foundation of photosynthesis. So chloroplast and chloroplasm are the building blocks of those are nitrogen. And without nitrogen, photosynthesis would not trap or capture carbon from the atmosphere and release oxygen. So it's just a very foundational cycle in our planet. Very important to understand how life exists and how energy is transmitted across all types of life forms across the planet. And usually it's been very natural cycles that have developed over millions of years, but we can induce those in an artificial way. But so there's a lot of data capture and nitrogen discussion in the beginning, microbiology, but as the ecosystem comes to life, we've really done a lot of or invested a lot of our time into mapping out the different science standards that teachers have as a responsibility to touch on as learning objectives for students, but really that students or even parents for that matter can be guided in this process of understanding, when this is happening, this phenomena is happening, and therefore I can reinforce this learning objective with that particular phenomena. And this is really probably where we've spent most of our time, more so than developing hardware or PlanetBox, but really in making the curriculum interchangeable and plug and play. So yeah, that is a quick intro there. As mentioned, we have an app for data collection, video tutorials, all types of asynchronous materials and supporting materials. And it's been a very interesting journey. We're now on our third year. We are serving about 30,000 students in the US, and we have some pretty awesome district relationships amongst them. with Hillsborough County here in Tampa. They are the 7th largest school district in the US, but we're also a little bit in the Northeast, and we have implementations of PlanetBox in our curriculum as well in some rural districts around Florida. So the pandemic year disrupted us, but we went all in on developing the materials needed for remote type of learning and remote professional development for teachers and at-home use of PlanetBox. And I think we pivoted just quickly enough, but moving forward, we want to leverage everything we've developed in the interim to leverage our resources and make our curriculum as relevant as possible, even in school applications, which is where we serve most of our customers. So that's a quick intro. I'm done sharing for now, and I'm happy to reinforce some of the visuals by sharing photos of PlanetBox in the classroom.
Oh, yes, please.
If you'd like to see them. Sure. So let me leave the presentation for a second. And I do have a couple of photos here. So these are just a few examples of PlanetBox in the classroom. Some of these you might have seen. They're mostly elementary students because a lot of the photography we have was earlier on when we were in fact mostly in elementary. And as we've developed materials, we've moved up the K-12 ladder. So on our second year, we were mostly in middle schools, and today we're mostly in high school. So as we've grown our offering, because of our curriculum alignment and development, we have become more commonplace at the high school biology and environmental science offering. But
could you give us an idea of what's the dimension like? Okay, I see an adult standing next to the PlanetBox right there.
Yeah, sure. So here are two adults. It's just over a square foot footprint with the light. It's over 3 feet tall, but it's not super large. It's about 10 gallons, so they can fit multiple in a classroom as lab stations. And the benefit of having multiple is that teachers can break down their students, their classrooms into smaller student groups, and each student group can take ownership of their own PlanetBox. And I can't speak for Malaysia, but here in the US and many developed countries, when you think about bringing science to life, there's a lot done in robotics. There's a lot done in STEM as a whole, computer science for sure. But usually the life sciences have been moving towards the gamification or virtual environments. And so when you think hard about what it actually means to engage students in a hands-on experiential manner, it often means having to go outside to test the water from a pond, from the sea, from a lake, from a river, sometimes municipal water, which is still relevant to test, but is obviously treated water. There's not a lot of microbiology that you can observe there. And so one of the value propositions, the benefits that we look in sharing through PlanetBox is that you're bringing phenomena that is usually limited to the outdoors, and we're bringing it into the classroom. Not because we believe that students should not go outdoors, but because this is students are not inclined to go outdoors these days. They are increasingly connected to the internet, increasingly urbanized. The world is increasingly urbanized. And so we want to at least capture their interests and their curiosities and attention indoors where they spend their time, whether it's through play or through traditional formal education, but do so hopefully to generate that mindset and that interest to go explore the outdoors further. So we see ourselves as a bridge, as a gateway to outdoor activities. But the reality is that you can't always scale outdoor activities because they disrupt the flow of the classroom. They require a lot of time. Not every educator has that privilege, that time, that space. And PlanetBox normalizes this experience for students, whether it's understanding water chemistry or the pH of nitrification processes, excuse me, or simple things like gardening that they might not have a garden. Now, I understand this is a growing trend globally, including Southeast Asia, but through Planet Box or through aquaponics more specifically, there's just a multitude of different topics that one can explore, including food production as mentioned, but so many other things. Here's a cool example. This is the project using these planet boxes. We're looking at ecology phenomena. So not so much growing food, but growing native plants, building carrying capacity, and exhibiting biodiversity as a means to creating carrying capacity. So with Planet Box, when algae starts growing, we introduce an algae eater. And unlike regular fish tanks that you either buy some sort of algae killing chemical, we actually just say, hey, this is a natural phenomena, and we encourage you add a Plecostomus or a snail, and these are organisms that feed off of algae, and so the algae is actually controlled in a natural way. And this phenomena, along with others, explores carrying capacity through a very interesting lens, and one that hopefully we can encourage students to think about their, globally, the role of our society, of human beings, and the steps we can take to increase global sustainability. So yeah, it's really this intersection of education and environmental action.
Amazing, Djimo. I'm looking at all this and absorbing as much as I can from your sharing, and this is wow. I mean, to
Sure,
hear
yeah.
that to hear that this is really taken on by schools in America is really heartwarming. And I do hope that sometime in the future down the road this reaches Malaysia to a certain extent. And
Yeah,
I like how your team has got all this thing very well thought out. Just very quickly before your next slide that you're going to share with us, how big is Just Learn? What's your head count like?
Yeah, so right now we are about 5 full-time and then 3 part-time. And we just really started growing in the last year. So in the last year with the app development, with our website is completely being redone today, not today, but currently. And we're very excited to just release a whole suite of new offerings and integrations. We're doing really extensive videos. So we have some older video tutorials that we have. I'm happy to showcase those in a second. But we're developing much higher quality footage to really help scale not only video tutorials, but really the associated content behind instructionals and marketing materials, and potentially social media content, not just for marketing purposes, but to bring these interesting topics to where people spend a lot of their time already. So
yes.
yeah, so these are just drafts. It's not cannot currently be found on our website, but I like this particular video we're working on because it walks one through that setup process, right? And showcases how something so simple and so sterile, like a box with a particular configuration, with the right attention and details, you can actually bring it to life. So this is just a quick tutorial on setup. We don't have the rest of the videos done, but it walks you through, the setup, the assembly, and it's a small teaser for the types of instructional materials we're developing just to facilitate your own use of Planet Box or other aquaponic systems. As you can see, there's a fish tank component, and then there's a garden component, and the medium that I had mentioned earlier, both for the bacteria and the plants, is added to the top. And we provide that medium, and then this video is merely showcasing how that medium is put together. So this is one of many, but yeah, if you're curious, about a little bit more about the process of plants, let me just briefly skim through this. We obviously talk about a lot of curriculum, but we walk people through the seeds setups, the life cycle of the plants. I don't know. It looks like it's glitching on the sharing of the screen, but I'll stop sharing in a second. But this life cycle is captured and recorded in a lot of detail to be able to walk the users through understanding what different stages mean within PlanetBox and the aquaponics life cycle. So yeah, it looks like it's stuttering, so I'm going to stop sharing this because it's not too happy with the screen sharing. Yeah, that's it for screen sharing. Let me know if I should stop the sharing process.
Yeah, no, just leave it as it is. We can continue chatting.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the chat box here, and we do have a question, and I think you did mention it in your presentation, but in any case, this is from Ali, and he was asking, are there any plans to take PlanetBox out of the classroom and into people's homes? I guess perhaps you know, a little bit of commercialization in a sense, and not so much for education purposes. Is there any plans of that sort in the long run?
Sure. I personally have my own PlanetBox at home. I'm happy to show it over the webcam here. So this is my living room, and I have a PlanetBox here growing a few different plants. I'm growing an exotic variety of beans back there, so it's still a bit younger. And I'm doing some research on wheat plants. I believe in the commercialization of staple crops or commodity crops like your rice and wheat through ecological or extensive agriculture such as aquaponics. And so not only do I sometimes grow food or keep it aesthetically as a furniture piece, but I conduct real research in my living room, and that's the purpose of PlanetBox: is to look good and be aesthetically appealing, but to be a welcoming experience for sustainability. At least the global discussions that we should be having as we are right now.
Fantastic. That looks great. Another question I would have is this. Obviously, Rejuvenate focuses on the youth, and you know, you touched a little bit on the fancier STEM disciplines, right? Like in Malaysia, there is a boom in terms of robotics, of course, drone tech.
Right.
In Malaysia is also a very big thing. We've got companies who are in the top 3 in the world in terms of using drones for agriculture and whatnot. And of course, AI and AI, IoT and stuff like that. How do we get youths to be more excited about aquaponics?
Yeah,
where do we even begin?
Right. I mean, I would say that aquaponics already excites people, but I guess I would change the question a little bit. How do we get people to be excited about agriculture more broadly, students, right? And you mentioned some really interesting examples around STEM with robotics. Usually, robotics by themselves are pretty attractive spaces. They're cutting edge, they're innovative, they're high tech. All types of cool things can happen. Can be done through robotics. But I would encourage people to look at agriculture really as a frontier and not necessarily as just a field. The future farmer is not going to be growing food like we have traditionally grown food for the last thousands of years. The future farmer will be flying drones and developing algorithms and working on big data and bioinformatic and machine learning and if imaging is so important, whether at the satellite level or through your phone. I mean, all these things are emerging opportunities within agriculture to refine agriculture, but to increase global sustainability. And so it's just one of the largest, if not the largest, industry that we have today. Everybody eats, and it's practiced globally. And so I would encourage more people to look at this space as a career opportunity, as a workforce development opportunity, and to bring their expertise and their interests that they have, not necessarily to have to change into being a farmer, but to applying their engineering know-how or artistic expression or whatever true talents they might have, but to apply it in food systems.
You know, Djimo, you said some things that really hit home, and I think there is that movement or there is that initiative that is being, you know, grown in Malaysia at the moment with when it comes to students and education. And you know, I would love to point you to certain people to start discussions a little bit more seriously in terms of how we can change this curriculum in Malaysia to make it more like what you said, you know, agriculture centric in that sense. At the end of the day, we are a country that is dependent on agriculture in that sense. I mean, we are Malaysia is rich in terms of that resources, and you know, I think you'll be the perfect guy to be I guess opening their eyes to like what you said, a new frontier.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the invitation to speak, and I look forward to corresponding with you further around the opportunities that exist on your side of the world. As I really believe the education should be universal, should be for all citizens of this planet, not confined to any single country or border. As myself, I'm from Africa. I live in the US, and I would absolutely love to come to Asia. So I'll be waiting for your invite.
Have you been to Asia?
Yes, I've been to Asia, but not to Southeast Asia, mostly between the Middle East and India. And I have been under discussions recently with Singapore, a few entities in Singapore, particularly for sustainable food production, but also for education. So I know that is in close proximity. And so maybe I could be visiting more than one country in one trip.
Perfect. Let's hope the conditions in terms of the pandemic improves, and then you know, definitely we will welcome you here in Malaysia and get to speak to you up close, and you know, hopefully you drop us more gold nuggets in terms of your field of expertise. I'm sure we are, you know, more than happy to have more of them, you know. Yeah. So at the end of the day, what's the midterm and long-term plans for Just Learn? Just to wrap this up.
Right. So you know, I think we've done quite a bit to accomplish a solid, reliable, robust hardware tool with associated curriculum. Our medium-term objectives are to continue growing some of our relationships with schools, to transition our curriculum from a supplementary curriculum into a core curriculum. And this will involve expanding a lot of our tools and activities and packaged experiments and kits, really beyond aquaponics through Planet Box, but into, you know, really truly commercializing as many activities that reflect you know, careers that are needed and subject matter that is important to learn from. The long-term objectives here are a few. For one, I see Just Learn, broadly speaking, as an education company, but also a research company. So we would like to be growing our relationships at the university level with design challenges and research objectives around food and around they're all types of incredible, important things that can be understood through aquaponics, such as sewage treatment and upcycling of grid level municipal waste runoff, removing heavy metals from water. I mean, there's just an array of interesting deep science that should continue to be understood. But some of the truly long-term goals, and perhaps they could be medium-term, are to introduce our curriculum into developing countries as well. So not limited to our current, fancy planet box that is really expected to be in a well-equipped home or science lab with, optimum internet coverage, and all the bells and whistles that developed countries do have, but to really be able to introduce this in other contexts, such as in Africa. I myself, being from Mozambique, have brought that deep desire to do so and to serve developing countries. Malawi is a country that we're specifically looking at to introduce this curriculum, just because there are some interesting models happening in there. So between evolving into being a vertically integrated curriculum solution around environmental science and environmental engineering with this theme of circularity of global sustainability, we would definitely like to fill in those shoes, as well as expand into a global reach of developing country education as well, and really have the peer-to-peer involvement between developed country and developing country, because we should not discriminate the solutions to climate change and to addressing biodiversity loss and habitat loss. I think this is something for all of us to address collectively as a species, and these career opportunities should not be limited to countries that can afford a high-level education, but also to those that are just receiving internet or wide-scale energy for the first time. I think these opportunities need to be made as accessible as possible globally. So those are our goals.
Well spoken, Djimo. I think you hit the nail in all the points right there, and if only there are more of Djimos in this world.
Well, it's a bit awkward for me to talk about myself, but at least I can see myself as a living example of someone who learned more about basic chemistry or biology through hands-on interactions with aquaponics. And for that, I do hope I can spread these opportunities to other people out there. So thank you so much for having me with you today.
Beautiful. And with that, we thank Djimo for spending his very early morning with us, and we wish him a good day. And to our audiences here in Malaysia or on this side of the world, it's a good evening to you, and we hope that you have enjoyed the session with Djimo. And obviously, we will share more details about Djimo and Planet Box in our LinkedIn as well as our Facebook page. So do hang around, and we will share those information in the coming days. So Djimo, once again, thank you, and we will see you again. I hope you stay safe and stay well in Tampa, Florida. And that's good night from us here in Malaysia.
Thank you, Andrew. Likewise.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.